There's going to be quite a few videos in this series rather than one big video that shows all the features. I'm going to cover bits and pieces here and there so you can jump in whichever you need. Um, any updates, please look at the title of the YouTube video and also the description. YouTube doesn't let you uh, replace a video with updated content, so anytime I'll need to make updates, I will just note it down there. Also, keep an eye on the blog at customtype1.com. I'm going to post updates there for loop follow as well. So in this first video, I just want to show you the basics. You can see here I have an iPad on one side and an iPhone on the other. These are running in simulators on my computer, which lets me show both of them. The iPad is set up for Dexcom only. The iPhone is set up for Night Scout. So you can see if you add Night Scout, it gives you more options than just Dexcom, and that's because, especially if you're looping, you have a lot more data. The settings, and I will just show you on one of them, is you have show Night Scout settings, show Dexcom settings. You just toggle it to show it. This toggle button doesn't turn things on and off. It's just to hide the settings so that you don't accidentally change them if your screen's on. So enter username and password, and I will show you Night Scout on this side. Username and password for Dexcom. This is your Clarity login, so or the login you use on Dexcom.com, and then pick US or non-US. For Night Scout, you enter your Night Scout URL. Make sure you have https://. If you use a token, enter that token. If you are not using tokens, just leave it blank. If you're not sure, when you load Night Scout, you can look in the admin section and see the tokens. And then pick your units that you want to use, MGDL or MMOL. You should select this even if you're only using Dexcom. It controls several other things that are used in the app. The main display is really what I want to cover in this first video. From top to bottom, and I will show you on both screens, you have BG with your trend and your delta. Your delta is just the change from the last reading to this reading. So +0 means she was 123 the last reading, 123 this reading. Above the BG, it will either say Dexcom or Night Scout. That is which data is showing this current BG. And so it just tells you which server you're pulling from. Now, if you enter both Night Scout and Dexcom information in the settings, it will attempt to pull Dexcom BG readings first. But if it cannot pull Dexcom readings, it will immediately fall back to try and pull Night Scout readings. The reason that's important is if the share server goes down, like has happened a few times, it can immediately fall back to Night Scout. So with loopers specifically, I recommend disabling bridge in your Heroku variables and turning on upload readings under loop CGM settings. That way you actually have two CGM sources. They're both coming from the same transmitter, but one source is loop reads it and uploads the reading to Night Scout. The other source is the Dexcom app reads it and uploads it to share server. So if either go out, you should still have the BG values from the other. And we've had this happen probably 3 times over the last year alone, when one of the two was having issues and it fell back to the other one. The one thing about for loopers, every time you change a transmitter, you need to recheck that upload reading so that your loop, you delete the CGM source and add a new one. So when you do that, you need to turn on upload readings again. Underneath the trend direction and the delta, you have minutes ago. This is your BG reading. When it hits 4.5 minutes ago, it automatically flips to seconds, so you can get a little closer look at it. And we've measured the delay differences because it has to go from transmitter to Dexcom app or Loop app, from there to the share server or to Night Scout, and then from there down to Loop Follow. And what we've found is that right around 5 minutes, 20 seconds is when the reading is guaranteed to be there. So you'll notice usually 5 minutes, 20 seconds is when that reading is going to update to 0. And so that's when it's going to check. Now, if you're using Night Scout, you'll have this section to the right that you won't have if you're using Dexcom only. These are all of your loop settings. This has not been tested with FreeAPS X. It's not been tested with Android APS. If you're using those and want to help code the details that would need coded to make this available for those systems, please reach out on GitHub. So for loopers, insulin on board, carbs on board, basal, all of this is fairly standard. It's the same stuff that's pulled directly from Night Scout that you'll see in Night Scout. The only ones I've gotten questions about are some people don't use sensor age and cannula age. These are basically your Dexcom sensor and your pump site. I recommend you use these in Night Scout because we do have alerts for them. Sensor age is going to be 10 days for Dexcom, and cannula age is going to be 3 days. And you want to use in Night Scout CGM sensor start to trigger when you start the session in the Dexcom app, and pump site change. And those are specifically the two that you want to use every time you do those, and that will reset these. Prediction also, it's the purple line over here, but then also the values here on the right. The purple is Dexcom's final, or sorry, Night Scout's Loop's final prediction over the time period. The two values is the low and the high that Loop is predicting. So you can see the whole range, and you can see just what the last one is. Underneath that, you have your main graph of data, and you'll see this is different. On Dexcom only, you're only going to have BG values. On Night Scout, you're going to get at the top, you have overrides. You see I click on it, it says it was a 90% override entered by Loop. If you triggered a remote override, this would say remote in it for entered by. You have orange for carbs, which show grams and hours of absorption time. You have blue for boluses. You have the blue bar graph at the bottom for temp basal adjustments, and you can click on these as well to see. The dashed blue line is your scheduled basal. So you can see how different it is between your scheduled and the temps that were given. And then your red and your yellow lines are on both. That are your high and low lines that you can set in the graph settings. So you can set those wherever you want, and that just controls your colors on the dots and lines as well. The last thing down here underneath it is you have this graph, small graph, that you can click and drag. So you can click on the small graph to drag the main graph at a different point. Oh, and to the right, on if you're using Night Scout and Loop, you will have Loop's predictions in purple as well. And it is adjustable from 0 hours all the way to Loop's 6 hours of how much of that you want to display. Then finally at the bottom, you have standard stats. And if you want to change the A1C, that is under general settings, use IFCC. So if you're used to IFCC for an A1C number rather than the percent, you can toggle that, and that will change your setting. There are options to display multiple days of the graph, but I do want to point out that the stats graph is specifically the last 24 hours. That's it for this video. I'll be covering more stuff in the upcoming videos.